Hi guys, welcome and who dat? I'm Joe, and today I'm here to ask a simple question. What should the Saints do this offseason? Normally I do reaction videos to the games, then I'll do a preview video for the next game. We have 2 games left this season. It's the holiday week. The Saints played on Thursday night, got utterly destroyed by the Rams. And I decided instead of doing a reaction to that game, I'm going to start looking forward to the offseason. Now, the Saints have 2 games left against divisional rivals, and if the Saints manage to beat Tampa Bay and Atlanta, and other things happen, a myriad of other things happen, then there's still a chance this bad Saints team can go to the playoffs, win this bad division and go to the playoffs. But I made up my mind weeks ago that we're not very good. There's a chance we could play out of our brains and win a game in the playoffs or something, but we don't deserve to be there, and I think that was evident. So as much reaction and review to last week's game that I'm going to give you is right here. Everything was on the line, and this poor-ass division, we saw exactly what we should have expected. The Saints went out there and were outplayed by a much better team with the same record, but a much better team, much better coached team, and the Saints end up coming back against some half-ass prevent defense the Rams were doing because they were up 30-7 in the fourth quarter. Final score is 30-22. The Emperor empty yards is exactly what Derek Carr is. And then this weekend, we watched our division rival Atlanta with the same circumstance, same situation on the line. Atlanta go out there and whip the team's ass that they played. And in Tampa Bay in our division with the same situation we were in, go out there and whip the ass of the team they played. It's obvious that the Saints are the third best team in this division. And that's where we stand. And regardless of what happens in the next 2 weeks, whether we make the playoffs or not, that's how I feel. We're not as good as Atlanta or Tampa Bay, and that's awful. So I'm looking forward to the offseason. Everybody's been calling for Dennis Allen's head and Derek Carr's head for a long time now. So I've decided, let's do this video. I don't have a lot of people to talk to about this stuff. Going back and forth on a social media page is painstaking when you have to type things out and you can't just sit there and talk about it. So I'm going to talk about it. And then you guys can leave your comments. Let me know what you think. But there's 4 things that I know for sure that this team has to do in the offseason. And we're going to kind of touch on all of it. So not to make this simple, but the number one answer for what the Saints should do this offseason is fire Dennis Allen. Yes, fire Dennis Allen, and that means the entire coaching staff as well. So I started thinking about the coaches that were on the team, and I wrote everybody down of significance. And I was trying to think if there were any coaches on this staff that I would actually consider keeping. And I wrote down a bunch of them and decided, like I'm sure most of you have already decided, if we get a new head coach and he wants to keep any of the garbage that's already in-house, he might not be worth hiring to begin with. So this is moot anyway, but I'm okay with defensive coordinator Joe Woods. I'm fine with him. I think he's got a great track record with the secondary, and this year our secondary has been pretty good. If there's a head coach that comes in and he's okay with keeping Joe Woods around, it helps with the transition as far as the defensive players go. I mean, they won't have to learn anything, and then we can get a new offensive coordinator in here. And so, I'm okay with that. But I have an issue with the performance of the defensive line. So Ryan Nielsen's now with Atlanta, and our new defensive line coach, Todd Grantham, I'm thinking he's he hasn't had a lot of time to show anything, but I haven't seen anything special This defense as a whole has been letting us down this year. They play a shutout victory against the Patriots and then, give up 30 points against the Rams. The Rams look like the greatest show on turf reborn. Ridiculous. So, yeah, I'm not good with either of the line coaches. Doug Marrone or Todd Grantham can go. And all of the offensive coaches can go. The only one that I'm kind of okay with is Cody Burns, the wide receiver coach. I'm kind of okay with him. I don't even really care for Ronald Curry. I mean, he's our quarterback coach and he's our passing game coordinator. And I can think of two things that suck on this team right now is the quarterback and the passing game. So, yeah, tight end coach Clancy, Barone. We've seen a regression in the tight ends. He definitely ain't the head coach of the Lions. Can't think of his name right now. He's definitely not him. And then, we got an ex-player, Brian Young, who's a pass rush specialist. And we see that pop up once every 4 games. Darren Rizzi, the special teams coordinator. I mean, I like his energy, his passion. I don't like the fact that he signed off on these 2 rookies this year. So, yeah. Defensive back coach Marcus Robinson. I'm fine with him. Linebacker coach Michael Hodges. I'm okay with him. So basically, yeah, we got a new head coach. He wants to keep Joe Woods. Joe Woods needs to get a new defensive line coach, or at least we have to revamp how we think about rushing the passer, stopping the run, especially when it comes to the front 4. Maybe we get a new defensive coordinator and we go 3-4. Never know. Number 1 is certainly fire Dennis Allen. And if that brings in a new head coach and we change the entire coaching staff, it's to be expected. And yeah, I'm ready to roll with that. And I'm pretty sure this is number 1 on everybody's list. I know that most people would like to say this offseason we should get away from Derek Carr. That's not going to happen. He's going to be on the roster next year. And then perhaps after next year, we find that out and get out. Doesn't mean he has to play next year, but Derek Carr will be on the team next year, unless we can trade him, and that's not going to happen. I mean, the proof is in the pudding, so that's not going to happen. Fire Dennis Allen, get a new head coach. Number 2, hire that new head coach. Get a whole new staff. I'm tempted to say the general manager, we need to look at that. Mickey Loomis, he's nobody's happy with him right now. But he found Sean Payton, Drew Brees. A lot of the drafts were pretty good over that 15-year period. Lately, it hasn't been very good. Yeah, he seems a little passive. He seems like he could just, let's just wait and see. And Mickey Loomis seems like the kind of guy that would give Dennis Allen a 3rd year. And that's going to be a telltale sign right there. If we don't fire Dennis Allen, number 1, and hire a new head coach and new staff, number 2, if we don't do those 2 things, it's going to be Mickey Loomis's fault. So if we run it back again next year, then I expect the same results. And I would hope at that point we consider a new general manager, because Mickey Loomis can win the fans back if he gets rid of Dennis Allen. So as far as the talent evaluation, once we get a new head coach and a new staff in here, I think number 3, we should totally reevaluate or evaluate our college scouting department. And the 2 areas that I'm focused on here are offensive line and defensive line. It seemed like we were pretty good at drafting offensive linemen for the, majority of the last 20 years. We've gotten some potential Pro Bowl players and potential Hall of Famers. But we also had a quarterback in Drew Brees for 15 years that could get rid of the ball in less than 3 seconds. Could make a lot of these offensive linemen look a lot better than they actually are. Well, what we've seen out of the last 5 years, 6 years of drafting offensive linemen is failure after failure. Whoever's in charge of scouting the colleges, offensive linemen, needs to be replaced. And defensive linemen. We have seen nothing but failure after failure in the last 6, 7 years. Spending too many draft picks on high draft picks on players that just don't pan out. And you've got Ryan Nielsen who wanted those big ends. You've got Dennis Allen who's signing off on all this stuff. But if that changes, maybe the scouting department in scouting for defensive ends that can rush the passer and not going by this stupid physical standard of 6'4", 275 pounds. Maybe they can scout good edge rushers. If you allow them to scout guys that are 260 pounds. And I've always had an issue with that, getting smaller defensive ends. Yeah, you can rush the passer, but you can't stop to run. But we've got these big defensive ends who can't seem to stop to run. And the bigger you are, the slower you are, and maybe it's because they can't chase these guys down. You would think you would be stronger at the point of impact, but whatever. I think that's something we need to do. We need to reevaluate the way we're scouting these linemen, because I think that's the biggest issue with this team is in the trenches. All right, and the number 4 thing that has to happen this offseason, after firing the coach, hiring a new head coach, reevaluating how we scout these college players in the trenches. I think number 4, we need to fix our salary cap issues and our old players issues. Now, this is something that might take a few years to figure out. This is something we need to get started on. And that's going to be up to Mickey Loomis and the new head coach. And as long as you got Mickey Loomis and you got Kai Hurley working the numbers, we're probably going to continually kick the can down the road. But that stuff is coming back to bite us in the ass now. You kick the can down the road by extending contracts to players who already make a ton of money. Players who are usually turning the corner towards, the twilight of their careers. And here we are extending them to 3 more years so we can allocate money into a signing bonus and then prorate it over the length of the contract. And by the time the contract's over, you've got a 37-year-old player who's not worth the 20-something million dollars they're getting paid every year. But they're too expensive to move away. They're too expensive to trade. They're too expensive to cut. If you cut Cameron Jordan before next year, I think it's going to be a $50 million hit on the cap or something. But if you keep him, he's going to cost us $15 million, $13 million. But I noticed in that Rams game that when Jordan was out there, we were less effective. And that's a shame, but that's just the way it is now. It might just be because of his ankle. He wasn't showing us much at the beginning of the year. So, yeah, it's something we're going to have to think about. I think as far as our old player issues go, we need to let these guys go. And that means taking a big hit in the salary cap. And the salary cap, we're strapped for cash as it is, because we're continually kicking the can down the road, putting everything on credit. We managed to survive and have money to play with. But if you're going to get away from these old players, you're going to have to let the contracts end. I mean, you're going to have to let them finish their last year and then say goodbye instead of re-signing Cam Jordan to 2 more years. Yeah, I'm there too. I have that same sentiment. I want Jordan to retire a Saint. I also want him to be productive for 13, 14, 15 million dollars a year that he's making at 36 years old. Yeah, I would like for him to be productive, but what I've seen this year especially, last year I think he finished with 8.5 sacks. He came on really strong at the end of the year, finished with 8.5 sacks, but yeah, we need to look toward the future. Players like Tyrann Mathieu, Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, those three guys, they're when their contract's up, they can retire or they can go try to play for another team. But we got to move away from these guys. And so, what do? You can't trade them. Just let the contract go. I think we're fine with Demario. I think he's going to play at a high level, whatever the remaining years are, but don't re-sign him. Same thing with Tyrann. I think Tyrann's got 1 more year left. And then after that, he can retire, Saint, or we can, let him go. We have to move away from older players. We have the oldest roster in the league. That's a fact. And we're not going to get younger unless we quit kicking the salary cap can down the road and restructuring these contracts for these older players. Now, you restructured Alvin Kamara, you restructured Marshawn Lattimore, you restructure players, that are still a little younger. But I mean, you're going to be paying Alvin Kamara, I think, $22 million next year. Definitely the year after that. Well, that's how the restructure works. You're going to be paying him that, a guy that rushed for 40 yards last week. Don't get me wrong, he's definitely MVP quality on this team, but he's not getting any younger. And 2 years from now, he's probably going to be even less effective. You want a new coaching staff to come in here and to figure it out, and for these guys to perform, for Alvin Kamara to be the player that we know he is. He's been in the league a while. Yeah, he's going to be over 30 years old, and we're going to be paying him $22 million a year. These kind of salary cap issues have to be fixed. I like what is done with the cap sometimes, what Kai Harley does. It saves us money, and it gives us money to make necessary moves. Without Kai, we don't exist. But I'm kind of hoping he sees that we, I think he's the numbers guy who can do it if you ask him to do it. And I think that's the only thing he's willing to do. But if you're the coach and the general manager and you're saying, no, we're just going to let this go, I'm pretty sure Kyle will say yes. So that's the number 4 issue, and that's going to take a long time to figure out. In order for us to replace all these old players, in order for us to become a younger team, to not be the oldest team in the league anymore, we're going to have to draft, and we're going to have to draft good. And we're going to have to draft a lot of players. So I'm going to do several videos throughout the offseason talking about the different moves the Saints make, and especially the draft. The anticipation to the draft is so much fun, and I'm going to be focusing on that a lot. And I'll start by talking about it a little bit in this video, because what should the Saints do this offseason? Right now, quarterback is the biggest issue, I think, for everybody. But we're stuck with Derek Carr 1 more year. Now, is this a good draft for quarterbacks? Maybe. Maybe. Last year was supposed to be pretty good. The year before was supposed to be pretty good. This year's supposed to be pretty good. There's always going to be quarterbacks coming out of college that teams think can be the future of the franchise. And sometimes the highest pick guys suck. Sometimes they're pretty good. Sometimes you draft a first rounder and you ride them way too long and it never works out. Sometimes you draft a guy late and he turns out to be a find. I'm sure there's going to be players in this draft this year who don't get drafted who end up being pretty good quarterbacks. And I'm positive that some of the better quarterbacks that get drafted are going to turn out to be garbage. So do we draft a quarterback this year? Well, I think because LSU has the Heisman winner in Jaden Daniels. I think because locally, as Saints fans and as LSU fans, we would love to see the Saints draft Jaden Daniels. And because Jaden Daniels is a very special player, I think a lot of people would want to draft Jaden Daniels. I think that is the way that we want to go. But in order to do that, you're going to have to forfeit some of your future. You're going to have to forfeit some draft picks to move up. So, first I'm going to pull up a projected list of the Saints draft picks this year. So this is what it looks like right now, as it stands currently. Well, there's 2 games to go, and this can change drastically, but this is a projection which includes where the Saints are at now, plus it also includes comp picks. We haven't been awarded the comp picks yet, but the analysts have looked at it. They've figured out how many free agents the Saints have lost. We get compensated picks for that. I've seen sites where we don't get a comp until the 5th round, and that's the one that I have up here. But I saw one site that projected we may get a 4th round comp. So we're talking about the last pick in the 4th round. But this is the list I'm going to go with for right now. And as you can see, with our current draft picks, sans the ones we've traded away already. And remember that number 2 is actually Denver's number 2 because of Sean Payton. So, we don't have our number 2. We have Denver's number 2. We don't have a number 3. We don't have a number 4, unless we get that last pick in the 4th round as a comp. But I don't have that here. I've got us picking 1 pick in the 1st round, 1 pick in the 2nd round, and then we don't pick again until the 5th round. Now, we get 4 6th round picks and 2 7th round picks. And hey, look, altogether it's 9 players. I mean, you have to hit some major home runs at the end of this draft for this draft to turn into something. But you're going to have bodies, and you're going to get younger if you don't trade all the picks away. I don't like this. I've been looking into the draft this year, and I don't like that we don't have a 3rd round pick or a 4th round pick. I think a lot of the meat in this draft is in every draft. This is in the 2nd round, 3rd round, 4th round. That's where you can really get really good bargains. Late 1st round projections that fall into the 3rd round. I mean, this stuff happens all the time. I'm going to be doing another video soon about Saints drafts in the past. I have a list of the best drafts the Saints have ever had. So subscribe to Rosenfield 10 and look for that video. But you'll see in those best drafts, it's the 3rd round and 4th round home runs that really, seal the deal. Finding guys in the 6th round and 7th round is great. Finding a Pro Bowl worthy player that late in the draft is rare. But you can find serviceable pieces, and the Saints usually do pretty good with rookie free agents as well, especially at, believe it or not, defensive line and a wide receiver and running back. So those are our draft picks. You want Jaden Daniels. You're not going to get him with the 11th pick. We might end up with the 15th pick, the 12th pick. We might end up picking in the top 10. We might finish the year so bad that we squeeze into the top 10. But I have a feeling we're going to play the kind of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde ball that we play, and we're going to win one, lose one, and we're going to end up right around pick 12, something like that. So let's say you want to trade up for Jaden Daniels. And let's say by some miracle in my mind, because, he's projected to go all over the place in the first round, but in my mind, he's going to be a top 5 pick. And I don't know if you're trading into the top 5. If you are, you're probably giving up your second round pick this year, plus your first round pick and second round pick next year. Some kind of combination like that to get into the top 5. But let's say he slips out of the top 5. He makes it to number 6. If you look at the draft value board, moving up from number 11 to number 6 should cost you a second round pick. That's all it should cost you. But that's not how the draft works. A team trading out of the top 10 is going to expect a lot more than just swapping first and getting a second. So they're probably going to demand your first round pick next year. And that's the price that I'm looking at. For the Saints to move from number 11 to number 6 to draft Jaden Daniels. You swap your first rounders, and you're going to have to give up your first rounder next year, and you're going to have to give up a second round pick. It's probably going to be this second round pick. So now you got Jaden Daniels at number 6, and you've got 7 picks left, and they're all 5th round or less. Plus next year you don't have a first round pick. That's what you're looking at if you go get Jaden. Now, I'm on the fence about this. I can see it both ways. I want Jaden Daniels. I can see how he's a special talent and he can elevate a poor team. He's the kind of guy you might be able to put everything on his shoulders and he can handle it. But I know one thing. If we go get Jaden Daniels with this roster, with the salary cap restrictions that we have, and the way that the draft is going to pan out, especially not having a number 1 next year, he's going to be on a poor team for a little while. He's probably going to be living a nightmare behind this offensive line. But hey, he might be a transcendent player. He may be able to elevate this team to better things. Part of me is very willing to do this. So that's one option. Your other option is you don't move up into the top 5 or 6 to go get Jaden Daniels. Maybe you trade down. This front office never trades down. But if you have a head coach that comes in here and demands the things that I'm talking about to get younger as a team, to get rid of these salary cap issues, then trading down makes a lot of sense. And trading down from, pick 11 or pick 12, you can acquire quite a bit. That gap there between the second round and the 5th round for our draft picks, that's glaring to me. I would like to have a couple of 3rd round picks and a couple of 4th round picks. Then we can address all of the needs that this team has, because this team has major, major, major needs. And I'm going to pull up the list right now of those needs. This is my perspective. I've been doing a lot of draft simulations lately, and in every site that I go to, they have cornerback as a need for the Saints. And I just think that's ridiculous, because that's literally the deepest position on the team. So when I look at other people's idea of what the Saints' needs are, it kind of blows me away. These are the Saints' real needs. And these 12 positions are positions that we need to address. The top tier are the ones that it's going to be completely necessary to address. The bottom tier are positions that we could address, but we can get away with not addressing it, but we're going to have to eventually. Maybe don't focus on a high round pick for those positions, but yeah, everybody can agree we need a kicker and a punter. So, on the top tier, the positions that I have highlighted are positions that we could actually draft more than one player at. So not only are they a position of need, but we may need more than one. I started off, and you can arrange these any way you want, but that top tier is the tier. That's what we're looking at. We got Derek Carr next year. If we don't draft a quarterback this year, it's not the end of the world. But we're going to have to draft one, next year. And then he's going to have to play as a rookie. So it'd be nice to draft one this year and give him a year under Carr, or beat out Carr when we're struggling and they just say, okay, put in the rookie. We're done with the Dennis Allen, Derek Carr project, and then we can put in the guy. So quarterback to me is a need. I think that the Saints fans would be pretty excited if you got any quarterback. If you drafted Jordan Davis out of Florida State in the 6th round, I think the Saints would be like, okay, at least we've got a guy that's not Derek Carr. So, if we don't trade up and get Jaden Daniels, we don't spend a high draft pick on a quarterback, it's not the end of the world this year. But quarterback is a need, and I've got that number one here. And then you're talking about offensive line and defensive line. We are so bad in the trenches, and we've missed on all of these players. We're going to need a left tackle, big time. I mean, Andres Pete's doing it now. His contract ends after this year. We may find it necessary to re-sign him because we can't even put Trevor Penning in the game as a 6th offensive lineman. I think he's getting time on the field goal unit right now. A 1st-round draft pick sitting on the bench. And I'm telling you, we need to draft a left tackle because he's not going to be our left tackle. This is awful. And we might have to re-sign Andres Pete just to have a body out there. James Hurst isn't very strong against the run. We're weak at running the ball on the left side. And if James Hurst was at left tackle, we'd be even worse. But yeah, I think we should let Pete go, and I think we keep James Hurst. And if he has to start at left tackle, so be it. But I think left tackle is a huge need. Matter of fact, that's the position I want to address with the 1st-round pick. I want to get an offensive lineman that's going to start at left tackle, and we can solidify that position and have the god darn thing taken care of since Teron Armstead left years ago. But we're also going to need a right tackle. Ryan Ramczyk is in his 30s now. He gets that constant rest day every Wednesday. And he has a degenerative knee condition that requires us to give him a rest day every week. And last year, he was on the injury report for half the season. And he struggled for half the season on that knee. Well, this year, not only is he struggling on his knee, he's missing games now. 2 games in a row he doesn't play because of that degenerative knee disease. So we know we're going to have to replace Ryan Ramczyk soon. Probably at the end of this contract, he'll retire. He may retire early just so he can, walk for the rest of his life. So Ryan Ramczyk is a Pro Bowl player. He's a good player. And I think we're going to have to replace him as well. If the Saints draft 2 offensive tackles with their first 2 picks, I wouldn't be mad. I'm just saying it's something we desperately need. And plus the depth. You're talking James Hurst. If you re-sign Andres Pete, or Landon Young, a 6th-round pick that we've kept, and apparently he's really smart. And he played out of his brain 2 weeks ago, and then last week he had much stiffer competition. But I've seen enough from Landon Young to know that he's not going to be our starting right tackle anytime soon. or left tackle. So you've also got offensive guard written here, and yeah, that's a desperate need, and it may have to be addressed twice. You have Cesar Ruiz on the right guard position now. We just re-signed him to a big contract. I think 4 years, $30 million. So he's getting paid to be a good starter. And according to the PFF scores, he ranks lower than every starter in the league. He ranks at like 65 or 66. So he's not as good as any other left guard or right guard in the league starting. And yeah, he played pretty decent last year. We overpaid him because he's a first round pick and he showed the signs under Doug Marrone to be a good player, and then now he's regressed. And there's some weeks when he's the worst offensive lineman out there. So yeah, we need a right guard. But Cesar Ruiz has talent. Left guard being manned by previously Andres Pete and, now James Hurst. Left guard is something that we desperately need. We got a 4th-round pick in Nick Saldiveri last year. Wasn't able to crack the roster as a rookie. And I think if you're not as good as James Hurst, then you're probably never going to start in this league. So I think guard is definitely something that we have to address, and probably twice. I could see us getting a young guy late in the draft to be behind Ruiz. We still could have a veteran round. We have Trey Turner, right? I don't know if he's going to re-sign with us. He got hurt the first day of practice. We got him, but a guy like Trey Turner would be a great option. He could be your starter for a couple of games, something like that. We can go and get a veteran to do that. And we don't have to address guard twice. We could just ride it out with Caesar. But I'm pretty high on getting a left tackle and a left guard in this draft, and addressing both positions twice if necessary. And then you got the defensive line. I have defensive tackle highlighted twice because I really think the only promising defensive tackle we have, is Brian Bresee. Colin Saunders and Nathan Shepard are both under 3-year contracts, and this is their first year. So we're going to have the veterans there for a couple more years. But we haven't shown to get any better against the run. And those guys aren't pass rushing anyone. Nathan Shepard's been okay. And Brian Bresee, I'm hoping turns the corner and gets better. You also have Malcolm Roach, an undrafted guy who's a really good bit player. But yeah, I think getting a defensive tackle is a necessity for this team. Certainly a defensive end. We need somebody to replace Cam Jordan, and we've been trying for half a decade plus to find the guy that's going to be on the opposite end of the defensive line to complement Jordan. And we never found that piece. Marcus Davenport, 2 first-round picks. Nope, that didn't work. He was always hurt. When he played, he was pretty good, but he was always hurt. Then you go and get Peyton Turner. He's always hurt. You had a good guy in a 3rd-round pick in Trey Hendrickson. You didn't pay him. You let him go. And now you have an undrafted guy in Carl Granderson, who is the best lineman on the team now. And that bothers me because I've watched Granderson closely his whole career. He's a good player. He shouldn't be the best defensive lineman on this team. But we don't have to worry about replacing him. As a matter of fact, Cameron Jordan's current backup, Tano Passanio, is a very good piece player. And, I don't know if we're going to re-sign Peyton Turner or not, but behind Granderson, we also have Isaiah Foskey, who is a 2nd-round pick. And although he didn't blow us away this year, I expected him to be a developmental player, and perhaps, he'll turn a corner. And in his rookie contract, before it's over, we'll see Isaiah Foskey turn into something who can complement Granderson. But we definitely need a defensive end to replace Cameron Jordan. You know, we've got him, whatever, 2 more years if he decides not to retire early, and he probably will after this ankle injury and his, very lackluster performance in the last couple of games. I mean, really the last month, 2 months, this whole year, he just hasn't done anything. And Tano's a good piece. Tano can be a defensive tackle or a defensive end. But yeah, we need to go and get a defensive end in this draft. And on the top of the tier, wide receiver, at the last of the top tier, I don't expect Michael Thomas to be on this team after this year. I think Michael Thomas is going to be gone, and we're going to need to replace him. Michael Thomas is a big body. I think we're going to need a big-bodied receiver to replace him. We have A.T. Perry, a 6th-round pick, and perhaps he becomes, that X guy or whatever they call it. It could be the big guy opposite Chris Olave, and then you have Rashid Shaheed as your slot, and, you're good to go. The thing is, Chris Olave is an excellent possession guy. He's not big. He's on the smaller end, 6 foot, 6'1". He's average, 6 foot. Great route runner, great speed, makes some incredible catches. But he doesn't know what to do with the ball in his hands. When he catches the ball, he just runs forward and dives, and you hope when he hits the ground he doesn't fumble. He is not imaginative with the ball. I don't think he has the ability to do anything special with the ball in his hands. And that was one of the knocks on him coming out of college. Look, I love Olave, and I think he's a possession guy. He's a special guy, a special player. But once he catches the ball, that's it. That's as far as it goes. So Rashid Shaheed is one of those guys who can be very electric with the ball in his hands. But, he's 5'10". He's smaller, so he's not going to be an every down wide receiver. It's going to be tough for him to make those intermediate catches in the middle of the field. You get the ball to him quick in space, and he can make some moves. I wouldn't say he has elite ball carrier vision, though. He's a good kick returner, but I think a lot of that is based on speed. And he's really good with the ball in his hands, and a lot of that's based on speed. I don't know how imaginative this undrafted guy can be, with the ball in his hands in space. So far, all I've seen is a whole lot of speed, but, a little more creative than Olave. So, anyway, my point being, at wide receiver, I think you need a big body because A.T. Perry can't be the only thing. I think you need a big body to be Michael Thomas's replacement. If you draft someone in the 3rd or 4th round, you're getting a higher draft pick than A.T. Perry. Comes with expectations. And I think besides a big body wide receiver, you may also consider someone who is good with the ball in his hands. Doesn't matter the size, whether he's 6 foot or 6'2" or 5'11". As long as he has some yak in him, give me a guy with some yak. A special player like Deebo Samuel. You want Rashid Shaheed to be that guy, but he hasn't been yet. So that's why I have wide receiver highlighted there. All right, and then you got the bottom tier. Linebacker, especially because of Demario Davis's age. Pete Werner's supposed to be the heir apparent, and he's not. If you go and draft a guy, an edge rusher, let's say, who you expect to cover on the outside as well, and then Pete can slide into the middle, then there you go. You have yourself your replacement for Demario in Pete Werner. Or maybe you draft a middle linebacker who can be Demario's replacement, and you keep Werner on the outside. Regardless, I think a linebacker is a necessity. And when you consider Zach Vaughn is better at defensive end than he ever will be at linebacker, and, you might need another outside linebacker on the other side. That's been a weakness of ours. If Zach Vaughn has to go out there and cover, if we're playing against a run-heavy team and he has to cover, we're in trouble. So linebacker is also a position we could draft twice. But, yeah, for certain, it should be addressed. Running back, definitely. Kendre Miller's injured way too often. And our number one guy, Alvin Kamara, number one. You never know when we're going to cut loose him. And then our number two guy, Jamal Williams, he hasn't been everything that we'd hoped. We signed him to a 4-year deal, so we've got Jamal Williams for 3 more years. So you may feel like running back's not a necessity, and that's why I have it on the bottom tier. But you consider Kendre Miller's injuries, you consider Williams' ineffectiveness, and you consider the fate of Alvin Kamara with that salary and his potential trade value as well. Right. Come here, baby. Come here. Come see me. Come on. My cat's on the table. I'm trying to get him to come to me so he doesn't shake the camera. You consider all of that, and then, wide receiver, running back is something that I would not be upset with drafting. Tight end. How about a real tight end? We have a wide receiver at tight end who's really ineffective this year. We have a lot of hope for. Maybe a new coach, the quarterback that gets him the ball more, and then maybe Jawan turns into something. He's a good run blocker, but he's a great receiver. But he is a receiver who's a tight end. And then you have Foster Moreau, who's a good veteran. You kind of expect Foster to be a grunt, and that kind of guy is a good number 2, a great number 3. And Jimmy Graham's not going to be on this team after this year. I don't think so. So tight end is definitely something that I would like to address. A good one. The last high drafted tight end we had was Adam Troutman, and that didn't work out that well. But before that, it was Jimmy Graham. That worked out pretty good. But I would like to see us draft someone in the 4th round, 5th round, a tight end, a complete tight end, a guy who's already a good run blocker and a good receiver. A complete tight end. Maybe he's just our number 3 when it's all said and done. But it is something. Lucas Kroll got a lot of people excited. He caught a touchdown for Denver this past week. So, something like that. And then safety. I mentioned kicker and punter already, but safety for sure. Tyrann Mathieu is getting older, and he's going to have to be replaced. We have Jordan Howden, and I think Howden could be that guy. But Marcus May isn't the greatest safety in the world, and I think he's got, maybe 1 year or 2 years left. We don't want to Marcus May. So, plus we need 3 safeties if we're going to go into, some sort of dime package. Maybe a safety who's good in the box. Maybe a safety who can play some nickel. So, that's on the bottom tier there. So there you go. The Saints draft picks and our needs. You move up and get Jaden Daniels. You're giving up a 1st-round pick. You're giving up probably our 2nd-round pick this year, and then you're trying to address all of these needs with all of these low rounds. Or you can trade down with your 1st-round pick. You could probably trade down several times and pick up a couple of 3rd and 4th-round picks. And then you can really address more of these needs with some, highly graded players. I am leaning towards that as a solution. I would not be upset if we mortgaged a bit of the future, moved up and got Jaden Daniels. I think of Jaden Daniels' success in college, and I think about the fact that he did have a pretty good offensive line, and I don't know if his processing time is fast enough behind a really bad offensive line, but I do know that he's talented enough, Riley, that he's talented enough to get out of trouble, and he's talented enough to make all the throws. So I'm a Saints fan, though, man. I think of Archie Manning. Archie Manning was a great quarterback. The league doesn't know it, and neither do a lot of Saints fans these days because he didn't have any success. And that's what can happen when you take a 1st-round draft pick quarterback and put it behind a bad offensive line. They never reach their potential. That could be what's in store for Jaden Daniels. Then again, you don't draft a quarterback this year. You address all these other needs, and you have Derek Carr going out there, an average quarterback, with a better team around him. But how high is your ceiling with that guy? I know one thing, you're stuck with him, at least next year, unless you want to eat $50 million in a salary cap hit. So is Jaden Daniels the only quarterback option? The last thing I'm going to pull up here is a list of the quarterbacks in this year's draft. These are some of the higher rated quarterbacks. So you've got Caleb Williams, you've got Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix. I hear he's pick 6 Nix. I'm not too excited about him. Michael Penix Jr. I like. J.J. McCarthy. You know, some people have him going in the first round. Some people have him slipping to the second round. I wouldn't mind him. Quinn Ewers from Texas. Michael Pratt from Tulane. When you get down here, you're talking about 4th round or lower. I think anywhere Williams, May, Daniels, Nix, and Penix could all go as high as the first round. I think they'll all be gone by the second round. Then you got Quinn Ewers from Texas. I didn't mention here Carson Beck out of Georgia, but he could be a second, third round option here too. And then you get into your 3rd, 4th round options with Michael Pratt out of Tulane, Spencer Rattler out of South Carolina, Jordan Travis out of Florida State, Joe Milton out of Tennessee. Those 2 guys could be 6th round picks, 5th round picks. I didn't put down Jalen Milroe either from Alabama. He could be a consideration here. So those are some of the quarterbacks in this year's draft. If we don't move up and get Jaden Daniels, and we decide to draft an offensive tackle, or we move down a couple of times, pick up some extra pieces, and in somewhere in the mid to late first round, we get an offensive tackle, or maybe a defensive end or defensive tackle, maybe a wide receiver. And then in the second round, you go ahead and get that other piece, the defensive lineman or the offensive lineman, whichever one you didn't get from before. But you pick up a 3rd rounder and a 4th rounder. So then in the 3rd round, you go ahead and grab that wide receiver. And then in the 4th round, you go ahead and take a chance on one of these quarterbacks. Maybe Michael Pratt out of Tulane, or Rattler out of South Carolina. I mean, would that make you happy? I mean, at least we're addressing quarterback. So this is the list of the guys. And, you pause it and look at it and you tell me, any of those guys excite you? I mean, I think drafting any quarterback is better than nothing. We have so many needs, So that's my dilemma of what to do this. What should the Saints do this offseason? I know we need to get rid of the head coach. I know we need a whole new staff. We need to reevaluate our college scouting department, and we need to fix the issues with the old players and the salary cap. But we also have a big issue with the draft. Do we address quarterback now? Is that special guy on this list? Jaden Daniels is the one, I'm pretty sure. I mean, what if Drake May falls to us at number 11? Is he good enough? Is that the guy you want? Is Caleb Williams going to be another Bryce Young? You just never know. Maybe we wait. Maybe we get Jordan Travis or Joe Milton in the 6th round, and then they turn out to be running around like Jalen Hurts or something. You never know. So anyway, those are the options. What should the Saints do this offseason? I'm going to be focusing a lot on the draft in this offseason, and we're going to be doing some mocks. I'm also going to do a video where I'll show you the highly rated players in each position in the upcoming draft. And of course, I'll be doing videos about any of the moves the Saints make, coaching staff moves, as well as player personnel moves. And so subscribe to Rosenfield 10 for more videos like this. I'm Joe. I'm glad we got to take this hypothetical walk into the future. And if you guys have anything to add or to suggest, please leave it in the comments. I would love to interact. Subscribe to Rosenfield 10, and I will talk to you later. Who dat?